Thank you, thank you. Later, science and music, because as you know, most of human life is here. The final word tonight goes to a gentleman who dispels forever the view that scientists tend to be laconic, dogged recluses who emerge only occasionally from their labs to advance tentative conclusions. A man who refuses to mince even his words, of which there are many. Brian J. Ford. A scientist generally, but more specifically, I read, though I hesitate to pronounce, a microscopist.
People never get that word right. I wonder why that is.
What is it then?
Microscopist.
Microscopist?
A microscopist, yes.
And it's someone who looks through a microscope. Therefore...
Well, it ought to be really. There is a vogue now for calling psychiatrists psychiatrists. So perhaps, I suppose, we ought to look through microscopes and ride bicycles. You could be right.
But that is what you do, still,
yes.
is it?
Yes, I
look through them for what, Brian? In the hope of seeing what?
In the hope of seeing something that nobody has ever seen before. The microscope, in fact, is a much more interesting tool to me than the telescope. We're telescope fixated these days, but 100 years ago, every household, every Victorian household, had a microscope instead of a colour telly. I mean, people used them for amateur entertainment. Kids used them in the holidays and in the evenings. They projected life from ponds onto their living room walls.
But is there fashion? Are there trends in science as there are perhaps in clothes or opinion or anything else?
Yes. Yes, the reason that subjects come in for specific attention is because of what I call fashionism. They rise and fall in the charts, just like pop records.
So what has been fashionable in the scientific world which has now gone out of fashion, for example?
Oh, well, I mean, you have things like white sugar, you had mouldy potatoes. Do you remember all that stuff? And at the present time, it's all beans.
Well, are you pouring scorn on whatever the current enthusiasms?
Yes, I am.
Maybe.
Because a lot of conditions and problems that we face are problems that don't receive an airing because there's just no currency in it. There's no trendiness. I mean, there are diseases like cystic fibrosis, which keeps raising its head, and which people dismiss because at the moment it hasn't got fashionism on its side. But there are other diseases which get a lot of attention for no real reason.
But I mean, that's the way of the world, isn't it, Brian?
Unfortunately, it is, but it shouldn't be the way of science. Science is supposed to be detached and objective and rational.
Science itself will never go out of fashion, I trust. You hope?
I hate to say this, but I honestly think science has run its course. These days, people look at problems which are somehow too broad for science.
Brian, nice to talk to you again.
Fun. Nice to see you too.
Brian J. Ford, ladies and gentlemen.